Official visit 2 is underway for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about those prospects today.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And during this off season, it's a little bit rotated on the scheduling, 3 days a week, but we had to make sure to get that third show in for you today. I want to break down the official visit number 2, which is this weekend. It started Friday and it'll go through Sunday. I want to talk about the names to be on the watch for. 13 prospects of the class of 2025 will be on campus this weekend, and we're going to talk about who's already committed and who could be on the verge. So we're going to dive into that. Then we're going to move it on over and talk about what's more important for the Gophers in 2024. Is it the offense or the defense? And finally, we're going to talk about Amari Allen, who is visiting Minnesota, a basketball prospect who maybe, just maybe, could have some interest in the Gophers. We're going to dive into all of it today, so be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of this Gophers content moving forward. And let's dive in today right now on the official visit number 2. Now, names to watch. Like I said, 13 prospects will be on campus this weekend from the class of 2025. And the Gophers have already had one official visit prior to this, being the weekend prior. Last weekend, we had official visit number 1. Now, last week, Minnesota received 7 commits from their initial official visit. Now, that was amazing, and I wouldn't expect another 7 after official visit number 2, but they could walk away with a few more names added to the crew. So let's learn a little bit more about who will be in town for official visit number 2. Now, of the 13 prospects on campus, 5 of them are already committed to Minnesota, and we've talked about most of them. Grant Washington, a running back from Ohio, he will be in town. Cameron Begel from Andover, he is a wide receiver, he will be on campus. Rhett Helvaka, I'm going to get that right eventually, but he's from Wisconsin, a linebacker. He will be on campus. And then Daniel Jackson, a kicker from Alexandria, Minnesota, and Colin Hansen, a defensive lineman from Byron, Minnesota. Now, I've talked about all of these players before, except for Daniel Jackson. I had somehow missed coverage on him prior, but I definitely will give you a quick background on him. Now, all I know is he's 5'10", 170 pounds, Alexandria, Minnesota, which Christian Hoskins is from. We've had a couple hoopers from Alexandria, they've got some talent down there. And so overall, this kicker, he is a little bit slight in size, but man, this dude has wheels. So maybe Minnesota needs to incorporate a trick play or two for him, because he has a sub 11 second 100-meter dash. So that boy is moving. Now, I love to see him not only as a field goal specialist, but a kickoff specialist as well. I think in the long term, the Gophers are going to have to find an answer with Dragan Kesich finishing his last year of eligibility this season. So they're going to need someone to step up and be that next Gopher great at the kicking position. And maybe, just maybe, it could be Daniel Jackson. And it's also a little bit of crazy cyclical process, because we also have Daniel Jackson, the wide receiver, who is leaving after this year with his final year of eligibility as well. So that is a whole lot, but I'm excited for him. Now, after those 5 players, there's also a running back, Shane Marshall, who will be on campus. He is from Georgia, and he is currently committed to the University of Southern Florida. Now, over his freshman through junior years combined, he has had 28 rush attempts for 1,881 rush yards and 24 touchdowns. Now, I believe last year as a junior, he was hurt, so he had limited playing time, but as a sophomore, he had 161 attempts for 845 yards and 14 touchdowns. That was his best year by far. Now, the injury junior year is likely what is causing his recruiting to be a little bit lighter for him, but the Gophers are in, and they are the only power school in on him right now. You've got the University of Southern Florida, you've got Liberty, you've got App State, and you've got James Madison and Georgia Southern all in there with offers as well. But Minnesota, the offer has to be interesting because he is committed to another school, but he is coming through on an official visit. So we'll see what happens there. But beyond him, that's when you get into the players who haven't committed anywhere. They're coming on this official visit. They've kind of narrowed down their choices. And so we're going to dive into each one of those. Terrence Smith is the first one from Illinois. He is someone to watch for sure. Now, he's a wide receiver, and I think he is a high priority player for Minnesota in this recruiting class. Now, he really seems like he is down to Minnesota or our rival in Iowa. So he has an Iowa visit scheduled next weekend, and then his Minnesota visit is this weekend. He also has offers from Iowa State, Purdue, and Western Michigan, to name a few, and he is a composite 4-star wide receiver. So across all of the different recruiting ranking sites, he comes out as a 4-star. 247 has him as a 3-star, but on the verge. But overall, he's 6'3", 6'4". He's got some nice height to him. He had 90 yards a game last year when it came to receiving. 90 receiving yards per game. And he had 59 receptions, 906 yards, and 11 touchdowns on the season as a junior. He's definitely a player Minnesota has a lot of interest in. Now, there will also be 2 offensive linemen in town. You've got Mark Handy. He's from New Mexico, 6'5.5", 310 pounds heading into his senior year. Now, he's got some big offers. He's got offers from TCU. He's got offers from Texas Tech, Georgia Tech, BYU, Arkansas, Arizona State, but it seems the schools that he is really considering are Utah, Baylor, Minnesota, Cal, and Duke. Now, I can tell you he is powerful for a high school player. Watching his tape, that is one of the first things you will see. You also can see that he reads and reacts rather quickly. So he has good instincts from the offensive line position, and he definitely has room to grow. If he gets into the right system, he could be a heck of a player at the FBS Division I college football level. Now, the other offensive lineman in town this weekend is Daniel Shipp from California. He's 6'6", 275 pounds. Minnesota is his only power offer right now. Others from Washington State, San Diego State, Montana State, Fresno State, Boise State, all the states, if you ask me. But overall, I think he's a player that could maybe be one of those immediate, like, oh yeah, I'm committed, I'm ready to go, especially with this being his only power offer. But we'll see if he feels like this is the right fit. On the flip side of the offensive line, you've got the defensive line. We've got 2 prospects coming in. Jaquan Stubbs of Ohio. In the last 2 weeks, he has visited West Virginia and Purdue, and now he has Minnesota this week, and we'll have Illinois next weekend to finish out the process. Now, you had offers from Indiana, Rutgers, Kentucky, and Wisconsin as well. And I guess he's also visiting Wisconsin on the Friday of this weekend, Minnesota on the Saturday. But overall, he's an athletic offensive lineman. He is 6'6", 250 pounds, but he also plays basketball. He also does track. And so I think he has a very high ceiling, but he still needs to come into his own. So again, it's finding the right system to work within and develop, but then also being able to take advantage of it and hopefully find some field time, maybe by your redshirt sophomore season. That would be a good transition for him. But overall, he is on the defensive line. And then the defensive lineman that really piques my interest is Derry Norris from Florida. Now, Derry Norris is super intriguing because he is a kid who has a ton of offers. He's a 3-star kid, but the offers are what really stand out to you on this one. Michigan State, Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, Texas, Texas A&M, and even the home state of Florida. And yet all of that, and it seems like his top 3 are Georgia Tech, Miami, and Minnesota. So beating out a home state school is going to be tough for Minnesota to try and outdo Miami and get him to land this way. But he's already taken visits to Georgia Tech and Miami. So hopefully Minnesota can leave a lasting impression here in this final swing. Now, finally, there are two more prospects I want to get into. Running back Dremeco Green from Texas seems to be in on TCU, SMU, Minnesota, and Arizona. And I have doubts about him committing here with two different in-state schools on him in his top four. But Minnesota definitely has the best history of maybe college production consistently at the running back position. But TCU has probably gotten the most guys to the NFL as of late. And then finally, wide receiver Legend Lyons from California seems to have narrowed it down to Kansas, Utah, and Minnesota. Last year, he had 74 receptions for 950 yards and 7 touchdowns. Minnesota is the first of those 3 schools that he's going to be visiting, and I think Minnesota will be prioritizing Terrence Smith in this visit of the 2, but he could be an interesting name to keep an eye on. Now, of all these names, the 3 that stand out the most to me are Terrence Smith, Derry Norris, and Mark Handy. If Minnesota can land 1 or 2 of those 3 players, it will be a steal and a huge weekend. But I don't think any of those players are going to commit until their visits are completed. So we might not have any immediate noise on that front. And if they do, you feel really good about them staying committed here at Minnesota. But I think if anyone commits this weekend, it would most likely be Daniel Shipp or Jaquan Stubbs. I want to know your thoughts, who you're interested in, who you're curious about. Drop them in the comments below. We're going to keep you updated on all things recruiting as we continue through the official visit weekends, but I appreciate you for tapping in. Next, we're going to talk about what's more important for Minnesota in the 2024 season. Is it the offense or the defense? We're diving into that coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience is definitely the winning formula to winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's speed, power, or style, they've got you covered, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. And with over 122 million parts, they are going to have you covered better than the transfer portal when it comes to finding the right parts for your vehicle. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every single time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay Guaranteed Fit is for U.S. customers only. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about what's more important for the Minnesota Golden Gophers in 2024. Is it the offense or is it the defense? Now, I think if you polled the fan base and you asked every single person you could, I think about 85 to 90% of the fan base would say the offense. The offense is more important. We haven't been able to pass. We have to find balance and all of that stuff. And I don't disagree with the sentiment. But I think for solely the 2024 season, defense is the most important thing for Minnesota to get right and get back to an elite level. The offense should be good enough to be competitive and keep them in games. Brosmer is a quarterback who can read the field well, who will not be afraid to hit his checkdowns and can make the layup throws. So if he's doing that and he's taking care of the ball and not turning it over and taking the chunk plays as they present themselves, Minnesota will be able to move the field, paired with their running back room, which should keep the clock rolling and churning out yardage, especially if fully healthy. Darius Taylor is going to be a monster, but he's got multiple guys behind him that can keep the job going, to give him a breather, to keep him fresh. C.A. Bangura has been really impressing over the course of the spring camp and the summer. You've got Jordan Newman, who has been trusted and had a 200-yard rushing game last year. And then you've got Marcus Major, who could be your power back, the short yardage, the goal lines touches. He could be the guy to punch those things through. So I think this running back room, paired with a quarterback that's not afraid to take the check down and take what is available and set themselves up for the explosive shots, the offense will be okay. And even if the passing game doesn't get going like we want to, even if somehow, some way we end up playing classic fleck ball where we run, it will be sufficable enough to keep this team in the games with their style of play, if the defense is good enough. That's why I believe defense is the key for Minnesota in 2024, because even if the offense only takes a slight step up, that should be enough for multiple more wins. Instead of 5 wins, you're looking at probably 7 wins. You're closing out those games that you should have closed out last year, and that is a bit better in the right direction. But if you want to get back to that 8 to 10 win range, I think the defense getting back to an elite level of play is exactly what Minnesota needs. Now, look at Nebraska last year. Now, by no means am I calling them elite or anything like that, but their defense kept them in every game for the most part. Their offense was so bad that it couldn't really turn it into the wins. It couldn't turn it into the results that it desired, but it kept them in a lot of single score games against teams that Minnesota lost to and against teams Minnesota has beaten. But the thing is that their defense did the hard work. They didn't have much on offense. They didn't have receivers that were trusted. They didn't have a running back that was consistent enough. They didn't have good quarterback play, but they had a defense that gave every team in the country that they played fits in moments of time. But some of the teams wore down on that defense because the defense was on the field too long. But that's the thing we need back for Minnesota is a good, healthy defense like that, but they can get off the field. And if they can get off the field and their offense is running the clock and extending drives, that's where Minnesota plays its best ball. So you look at Nebraska, you look at Iowa, who somehow, some way always finds a way to be an elite defense, an elite special teams, and then their offense is just one of the worst in the nation. But they still find a way to get into the 9-10 win conversation each and every time because that defense always stands strong and finds a way to get done, finds a way to create turnovers, finds a way to make Iowa plays. So that's why the Big Ten, it's all about defense. That is how you get to the next level of elite play. And if you think about it, you think about Minnesota's best season so far. Minnesota has seen its best seasons when the defense is playing at an elite level. Now, the thing is, the Gophers have better offensive talent than what those two programs I just named, Nebraska and Iowa, had last season. And Minnesota's best seasons, like I said, have gone hand in hand with them having a top defensive unit. So if Minnesota can get that type of production and shut down on defense, this offense will do enough, in my opinion. Now, the top-end talent is there on the defense. You've got Josh Joyner, who is an all-league type guy. You have Cody Lindenberg, who is an all-league type guy. And then you have Justin Wally, who is an all-league type guy. That's 3 levels of the defense where you have a high-quality all-Big Ten type player. Now, on top of that, you have a trusted vet in Danny Sturgau, trusted vet who could be on the verge of a breakout in Jack Henderson, a vet who could be on the verge of a breakout, Devin Eastern. Anthony Smith is on the verge of a breakout. Maverick Baranowski is ready to take that next strides, and Ethan Robinson is a proven vet who is ready to move up to the next level. That handful, that core of your defense should give you the talent and the personnel to really get crazy, really get wild, and play with speed, which is what Coach Heatherman wants to bring to this team. If he can play the way he wants to play with this personnel and everyone stays healthy, this could be a fun squad. And that's not even mentioning the young talent on hand, the Jackson Howards, the Zaquan Bryans, the Kerry Browns, Coy Parrots, Coleman Bryson. If breakouts happen from your Henderson, from your Eastern, from your Anthony Smith, Baranowski, if those guys break out and take the next stride into an all Big Ten type player or an honorable mention type player and right on the verge, super productive type players, if those guys take the breakout strides and your studs play like studs, this defense can get back into the top 25 defenses in the country. And if those breakouts happen and you have 1 or 2 young guys step out and have big time starter type play, this defense could be fun. Now, my biggest question on the defense is who are going to be your starting safeties? Is it Darius Green getting back in the starter position, or does he get passed up by a Kerry Brown, by a Coleman Bryson? Does Coy Parrish do enough, having not been in the spring and whatnot, but he is so impactful that he finds a way onto the field? That is one of the biggest question marks. If you can find the high-end talent and the consistency at the safety position, it seems like you should be pretty well covered across the rest of the defense. And then finally, can the interior defensive linemen step up and match the upside of a Devin Eastern? Because he is a stud, he is a mammoth, and he found his stride last season, and I think he's going to go even further this year. But can he have a partner in crime? Can he have a a couple others on that D line on the interior to create the pass rush from the middle of the field up the middle and push the quarterback to the outside and essentially get those talented edge players, which might be some of the most talented on our defense, in the positions to make opportunities and complete the sacks. I think defense is what wins in the Big Ten. Whether it's Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, they have quality defense and top end type stuff. And that is usually what helps them beat other teams in their conference and really handle on those games, because the offenses haven't been your burn the field, scorch the earth type offenses. So their defenses have been doing enough to shut it down, score on defense, and get the ball back in their offense's hands. Now, their offenses being more elite on those three programs that I had mentioned is what helps them compete and be competitive across the college football landscape. So in the Big Ten, defense is what wins. Offense is what helps you compete across the board. So if Minnesota can focus in on this defense and then let it turn into the confidence and success and explosive plays on the offense, that's where Minnesota comes into its own and finds its most success. So to me, in 2024, defense is the key to the Gophers' upside. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about today is Amari Bailey. He is visiting Minnesota. We're going to talk about what that means coming up next. All right, y'all. I said Amari Bailey. I meant Amari Allen. So excuse me on that, correction on that. But Amari Allen is visiting Minnesota next week. Now, Ben Johnson has really been taking some swings in this class of 2025 recruiting class with Kai Rogers, Tommy Oneman, and Amari Allen. All of these players are four-star players or right on the verge of four-star players. And I think Amari Allen will be in town visiting the Gophers next week. I know that's happening, but he is a top 75 prospect from IMG Academy, 6'6" guard. He's initially from Wisconsin, so he has that Midwestern roots, and he has offers from tons of power schools, high major schools: Arizona State, Auburn, Creighton, Florida State, Indiana, Iowa, Marquette, TCU, Tennessee, Villanova, and so many more. But he's visiting Minnesota next week. And one thing that is playing in Minnesota's favor is the fact that he has a great relationship with the staff, and they have been recruiting him the longest. So you've had time to keep developing that and build the trust and build a relationship and set the images, set the tone, set the vision of his freshman year and beyond with him. And that is something that has stood out with Amari Allen, is the fact that they have been comparing him to Cam Christie, and he liked what he saw with what Minnesota did with Cam Christie in this past season. It stood out to him. But overall, it's not just Minnesota in the hunt. Wisconsin is probably going to be scheduling a visit with him soon, and he also might take visits to Providence and Virginia Tech. So Minnesota has some things playing in its favor, being in the Midwest, being the first team that's been on him the longest and having those relationships, but also the proof is in the pudding with a freshman in Cam Christie that he could play a very similar style of role. Now, he's from Wisconsin, so maybe playing closer to home is also a benefit as well. But many folks are just looking at his scoring ability, but he is also a playmaker, and that is what his high school coach has said makes him super intriguing, is that his playmaking is as good as his scoring. Now, this could be a long shot player for the Gophers. It could be something that just does not happen, but he did say he took notice to what Minnesota did with Cam Christie last season, playing as a freshman and getting opportunity to thrive right away. And now he is likely going to make his way to being selected in the NBA draft. So hopefully that rubs off. Hopefully that leaves a strong impression on Amari Allen. And he, after his visit next week, really has the Gophers at the top of his list in consideration, and that long-standing relationship can be the thing that pushes him over the edge in the long run. That's the hopes. That's what Gophers fans will have their fingers crossed for and be praying for. But overall, we'll keep you posted on everything else we hear on that front with Gophers basketball and the possible recruits coming through in the class of 2025. If Minnesota were to win this battle, though, you'd have to imagine that it would be predicated on coaching relationships. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of Locked On Golden Gophers. I hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Leave a comment down below, your thoughts on the show, questions you have, people you're excited to have on campus next year, and so much more. I'll be talking to you again next week. We're going to dive into some fun thoughts, and I will see you then. Row the boat, Sky Mago Gophers, as always, and don't forget to hit subscribe.